Okay, my friends, today we're going to talk about Larry Scott's 20-inch arm program, and we're going to talk about his early programs too that didn't work as well. But this is actually an interview that was done later on with Larry, so he goes into detail about a lot of things, and it's a really good article. So he talks about, imagine having an opportunity to talk to Babe Ruth, and he's equating Scott as having won two Mr. Olympias as kind of equivalent to, in baseball, having been able to talk to Babe Ruth. There's Larry in his early days. He did start working out as a teenager. Um, didn't win anything except he won some sort of high school, sort of a bodybuilding contest. But he first got interested finding a bodybuilder magazine with George Payne on the front, actually in a local dump, and and there was an article inside about triceps training, and he didn't know anything about exercise. He saw that picture and thought, wow, this guy looks really good. There he is. This is a little bit later. It's probably like 10 years later than the magazine that Larry saw, but he had a good physique during that whole period, for sure. Um, so this was between my junior and senior years in high school, and I only worked triceps the whole summer. I just wanted to see if I could get any size. Didn't really have a lot of faith that I would grow and that my body would change, but when he returned to school in the fall, he started working out at the Y and began training his biceps as well with the following beginner routine, where he was just doing 3 to 10 of 3 exercises and pretty standard stuff. There he is, obviously a little bit later on. Just, of course, known specifically for his arms, had good lats. His legs, so-so, really. I didn't know what I was doing. Larry admitted there was a fellow at the Y who was a former boxer, and he gave us advice on how to train, basically saying, do your whole body. And the Y typically had like universals in those days, and go through the whole body, just one set of each exercise, and then do that 3 times. He said it was exhausting and it was a terrible workout, but that's what I did at first. There he is, and still pretty young here, but starting to come up a little bit, as you can see. Interesting footwear there for what looks like the desert, maybe requirement for being in the desert, actually. So, despite the obvious shortcomings of his approach, his progress was such that he placed second in the best built senior contest, as I mentioned, at the high school. Not really a per se bodybuilding contest, but more of a looser competition, and got voted the best physique of the group. After high school, he moved to LA to attend an electronics college, but returned to Idaho after only 6 months. When he was there, though, he had trained at Burt Goodrich's gym in Hollywood, which is a pretty decent gym, and he trained with this guy, Lou Degny. That's Lou right there, and we'll have a picture of actually Burt Goodrich. Now, Burt goes all the way back to the 30s in his bodybuilding career, and there he is. And you could see, in those days, that was a really good physique. It's almost like a Tarzan-like physique, and it's an Iron Man from way back, as you can see. So then he goes into an intermediate routine, which is standing barbell curls, three sets of 6 to 8. Bent over dumbbell concentration, 3 sets of 6 to 8, and standing dumbbell curls, 3 sets of 6 to 8. So he's graduated to 9 sets of biceps, gradually increasing the weight with each set before moving on to the next body part. And he was following that when he returned to Idaho, where he ran into Steve Reeves, interestingly, and he asked Steve what he thought about the program that he was doing, or if he had any advice. Obviously, Steve would have been a good guy to get advice from. He said, "That's crazy. You should change your way of training and start using a down-the-rack system, which he didn't tell us what exercise to do, but he basically said, you start with a set of 100 pounds, you drop down to 90, do a set with that, and then down to 80, and so forth. During this phase of training, Scott was doing 9 sets for bis and 9 sets for triceps each workout, which were all part of a full body workout. He seemed to like particularly kickbacks, as he did like dumbbell kickbacks and barbell kickbacks, which is kind of interesting because they don't seem to be a favorite among too many bodybuilders, though obviously they're done. We didn't know anything about a split routine. By the way, that came out of Salt Lake City from a fellow by the name of Dave Fitson, who split the body in half, training half the body one day, the other half the next day, which happened around 1960. A lot of people take credit for that, but he was the guy that actually came up with it. So Utah, a number of us from Idaho and Utah bought it out to California, and it was quite a novel idea at the time. Now here he is doing, looks like he's on a decline doing curl bar, triceps, like a French press type of thing. So he doesn't mention that really as being a regular part of his routine. Then he moved to LA, started the meteoric build-up that resulted in his becoming the greatest bodybuilder in the world, and produced those beautifully big 20-plus inch arms that connoisseurs of the sport talk about to this day. Despite the heavy emphasis on biceps training in his intermediate and early days, Scott was to learn something rather ironic, that his biceps were the more impressive body part, despite the fact that he was really concentrating on triceps. There he is at Muscle Beach, obviously, and still, not quite at his peak here, but definitely on his way. And that seems to be, the Mecca, especially in the 60s. So this gentleman that he saw training and, flexing his arms, said that his biceps were better, and he thought that he was talking really about the genetic shape of the biceps. So he started doing more work on biceps. And everybody knows that he trained at Vince's gym, which we did in our last video. And he became so identified with the preacher curl that they started calling it the Scott curl. He didn't ever claim to have invented the preacher curl or anything like that. He became so known with it that they started calling it the Scott curl and the Scott bench. So then we go into the advanced routine, which is the real bread and butter here. Dumbbell curls, 6 reps and 4 burns. We'll talk about what burns are later. Wide grip preacher bench barbell curls, again 6 reps with 4 burns, and then reverse grip curls with easy curl bar. So he's getting the brachialis and forearms in with that one. So then he does that whole series 5 times. So it's like 15 sets altogether. There he is with the dumbbell curls. You can see he has looks like a towel over the preacher curl bench there. He also has very specific standards that we'll talk about for the preacher bench. So only a year earlier he weighed 155, and he's only 5'8", so obviously not very big. After moving, 2 months after the LA contest, he met Rio Blair, a nutritionist, and started taking his protein powder, and it was the first time he'd ever taken any, and he put on 8 pounds in just 2 months, which was unheard of for him. So obviously, he at least felt like there was something somewhat magical to Blair's protein. And I think, don't quote me, but I think it was a milk and egg based protein supplement. So he was doing a set of dumbbell curls on the preacher. Then with no rest, we'd go to the wide grip curls with the barbell, and then he'd go straight into the reverse grip easy bar curls. Again with no rest. 5 series of these, 3 exercises, resting only long enough so that my training partner could also do his sets. When I was doing 5 series of 3, and on each exercise I would do 6 repetitions. And again, he talks about those burns. There he is with the wide grip barbell curls. And he goes on to describe that the burns are just partial reps, and it could be at the bottom or at the top. So, maybe just like a quarter rep at either spot. I think that worked so well because genetically he had a low connection on the biceps, where the bicep actually goes like, right into the top of the elbow there. It's almost meeting into the forearms. Preacher bench works low biceps really well, so it's just well suited to his anatomy. It is extremely painful when done properly, the entire series he's talking about. You can note the high position of the barbell when he's doing the barbell curls on here. It's almost, up to the top of his head, which is kind of interesting. So, could have something to do with that peak. And he's talking about when the first gym that he trained in LA, the preacher curls, it's terrible. Just had a crappy design because it's flat. And he's basically saying that should be well padded at the top and convex. So you'll see there'll be a color picture later on where it's almost like a triangle shape. There it is. That's not the flat-faced preacher curl that most of us do. In fact, I know the one at my gym is flat. He doesn't like the flat ones. So again, and there he is with the dumbbells and he talked about that they worked on the preacher curl at Vince's gym and, made changes to it, so it gradually got better and better. What you want is a bench that has a short face, bulging out in the middle, and rounded on both sides, and also is rounded and padded where the armpits are, with the post placed so your groin won't be pressing against it when you're actually doing the reps, and then you got a really great piece of equipment. Now, this is just a little the highlights of his bodybuilding career. So you can see he was Mr. California in '60, Mr. LA placed, and then '61, Mr. Pacific Coast. Goes on to win the Mr. America, then the Universe, in '63, medium class, '64 overall winner and medium. And then in '65 and '66, he wins the Olympia, and that's pretty much it, except he, comes back in years later. So with single-minded determination, going through a 4-pound tin of protein powder every 8 days, and drinking some 2.5 gallons of milk a day, he actually built up to a peak of 212 in '65 and '66. His best competitive weight when he was Mr. Olympia was about 205. And it goes on to talk more about his arms, obviously, which was always, his best body part. You can see his forearm is certainly no slouch there either. You can see the veins rippling in that forearm. Take a good look. I had a particular style for each of the different curls, he explained. Dumbbell curls were done kind of loose. I didn't care how I got them up. I just wanted to get them up any way I could. And then the barbell curls, it was kind of the opposite, where I did them very strict. I would get my armpits way down on the bench, and I would make sure that my form was totally strict. The magic to the whole combination is the barbell curl. You do the exercise totally strict, your body over the bench. You don't help the arms at all, even if a little bit of lean back. And that's the way he did it. Now, this is just, I think this was probably at Vince's gym too. But again, this is an exercise he doesn't really mention as being a total part of his routine, but something he was doing, which is obviously an extension. By the way, that bench that Vince had, we've improved in several respects. He said if you're using the same piece of equipment for 20 years and you can't figure out how to make it a little better, then you must not be too smart. Looking back over the evolution of his bicep training, he said he wouldn't change a thing about the advanced routine, except the beginner and intermediate. Yeah. Now, obviously, this is Lee Priest, also known for spectacular arms. And yeah, his arms are a little bit better than Larry's, but years later, better drugs, better equipment, etc. They're not that much better. So again, he talks about I'd make sure to do only 6 reps. It's a better figure for growth than 8 or 10. I would also do the burns. add some extra stress, and no more than 9 sets per body part, increasing intensity. I would also vary the way I train, and he talks about, going down the rack, up the rack, different kind of set and rep scenarios. Now, this is his wife, and I did have a couple children with her. Um, but he basically, after 66, pretty much, quit bodybuilding to be more with his family. And that was one of the reasons he retired. And this is talking about, he's like 52 as when they were doing this interview, and he said he still had like 18.5-inch arms. And he does that by with 30 minutes of workout 3 times a week, a little bit varied training program, and he only does that super advanced crazy routine once in a while for like a week, and then starts playing havoc on his joints. There he is, obviously, a little bit older, and with obviously Tom Platz. He actually has some pretty good legs in that picture. He's talking about, the joint thing being a function of age, which guys my age know all about that. So then he talks about he'll switch back to the more moderate routines and then come back to the instinctive program later. That way I can keep my arm size without constantly working out at high intensity. I don't have to train nearly as hard now as I did then to keep the size. And I don't train with that intensity anymore for the most part. He does talk about, though, that forearms, he found that doing forearms really helped with his bicep training too, because especially like at the bottom part of the lift on the preacher curl, the forearms come into play more. So he was saying that, developing stronger forearms did help him in that department. Here he's, describing this right here. You can't get your wrist curled unless you have the forearm strength. So I started working the forearms very hard. Noted as I worked them harder, I could use heavier weights in the biceps exercises. Consequently, it was the forearms that were the key to building bigger biceps. Now, this is him, obviously a little older. Unfortunately, he did pass at the age of 75. I'm not sure what he passed from, but seemed to have been a pretty good guy, ran gyms and stuff like that, and a well-liked bodybuilder. So that's about it for Larry and his biceps. Maybe we'll cover some other stuff that Larry did, like there was a forearm program I found. But that's it for now. Thanks for watching. Appreciate if you hit the likes if you do like the video.